Okay, great. So thank you everybody for joining me for this Srimad Bhagavatam session. And we will begin with offering our obeisances to the founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, and to the Guru Parampara. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sakachadam Sahagana Raghunathan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Shrato Pangur Mama Manda Matirgati Matsarvasvapadam Bojo Radha Madana Mohana Divyat Vrindaranyo Brumadaha Srimatratnagara Simhasanaustu Srimatratpada Srila Govinda Devo Prashtalibihi Sevyamano Smara Sriman Rasarasarambi Vamsivata Statastitaha Karshan Veno Sanergopir Gopinata Sri Stunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaye Udire Nas Dharma Projito Kaitavo Atra Paramo Nirmat Saranam Satam Vedyam Vashtamakramashta Shivadam Tapatrayo Moolanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Bhapareishvaraha Sadhyo Hridya Varudyate Atra Kritibihi Sushrushrubhi Stakshana. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं सुखमुखामृतद्राव्यसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भूरि भावुकः नास्तप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भागवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नस्तकी इदं भागवतं नाम पुराणं ब्रह्मसंहितम् उत्तमश्लोकचरितं चकार भगवान् ऋषिः निःश्रेयसाय लोकस्य धान्यं स्वस्ति अयनं महत्. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God, and it is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. त्वयि आसकृत् रतिम् उद्वहत तदा गङ्गेवौगम् मुदन्वतिः. O Lord of sweetness, as the Ganga forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction constantly be drawn unto you alone, without being diverted to anyone else. Namaha Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Viknavinasha Narasimha Namini Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayati Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Om Tat Sat. So Hare Krishna everybody. And we are now doing second canto, chapter 6, part 3. So the title is Puruṣa-sūkta confirmed. So why is the title Puruṣa-sūkta confirmed? Because it is reconfirming the same points which have been covered and discussed in the Rig Veda. So in the Rig Veda, there is Puruṣa-sūkta. Yajurveda also, the same Puruṣa-sūkta is repeated. And here we have the same almost similar verses, the meaning is the same, almost similar verses we see again in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is to clearly establish that, there are people who don't have faith in the scripture's authenticity. Some people say, oh, this scripture is written later, and the other scriptures we don't know, whether from the oral tradition it has been translated correctly along the years, some things may be lost. So therefore, the Rig Veda is described to be the oldest known scripture known to mankind, and its oral tradition is going back beyond at least 4,500 years ago, and it's actually much earlier than that also. So, and that is there. The Rig Veda's memorization is preserved through the ages. And if somebody doubts that, oh, the later scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam and all that is not exactly the same as the Rig Veda, then you can see that in this chapter 6, the Puruṣa-sūkta, it is confirmed. The exact verses in the in the Rig Veda and the Yajur Veda are described here again. The meanings are exactly the same. So this clearly establishes that the Srimad Bhagavatam, coming through parampara, carefully protected and carefully transmitted through parampara, it is directly authentic. It is none different than the oral tradition which has been preserved through ages but unrecorded. So yes, so that is Puruṣa-sūkta confirmed. So Puruṣa-sūkta is a nice, it's a series of verses and hymns which is spoken by the Brahmanas, which is recited. Now I wouldn't say spoken, which is sung by the Brahmanas in a certain meter. This is normally done in various rituals, installation ceremonies when the deity is being brought for parikram. So like that. So during these times, these verses are spoken, sung. So anyway, what is the meaning of that? So we have to understand the meaning of the mantras that we sing or speak. Then otherwise we will not get the full benefit, right? So Prabhupada mentions like that. So therefore we have to understand. So therefore Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2 is describing, we are going through all these things. So what we have covered in this chapter 6, so it's basically spilling over from the previous chapter 5, where Brahma is speaking to Narada Muni. Narada Muni before that asked Brahma some intelligent questions. So he asked Brahma, who is the creator, who is your creator, uh, where do you get the ingredients for this material universe, uh, under whose authority is this material universe creating? Is this how is the primary creation made, and how is the secondary creation made? So in this way, Brahma is now answering all of those questions. So already clearly established who's under whose authority. We already heard about the transformation of the energies of the Lord, how Dravya Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and what's the third one? Jnana Shakti. Yeah. So these three Shaktis, they play with the three modes of material nature, namely the modes of passion, ignorance, and goodness. And in this way, they transform the first material ingredient, or the first bhuta element, the first element, which is the false ego. Because without the false ego, the jivas cannot exist in this material creation. So therefore, the false ego is the first material ingredient. And we heard about the transformation of the false ego into various aspects. So by the Dravya Shakti, the false ego was transformed into creating the Panchabhuta, the five elements. So the five elements are like the earth, water, fire, air, ether. It began with ether, right? And we heard about how from the five elements, we also got the five tanmatras, the object of the senses. And to interface between the tanmatra and the five elements for the jivas, then the indriyas, the senses were created, the jnana indriyas and the karma indriyas, the knowledge acquiring senses and the working senses. And then from there, so in this way, we heard about all these interactions one by one previously. So now, so we know, and after that, we heard about how everything in this material creation is situated within the body of the Virat Rupa. So the Virat Rupa is the imaginary form of the Lord. So to link, to bridge between the impersonalist and the personalist, because without getting the personal touch, there cannot be any success in the impersonalism path. There has to be a connection with the personal form of the Lord. So therefore, the Puruṣa-sūkta is that bridge between Brahman and Paramatma. So to link impersonalism to impersonalism, the first link is the Virat Rupa. So within the Virat Rupa, when the dhyanis meditate upon the Virat Rupa is basically the various material elements, the various material creation, like the various planets, the Varnashram. So the Virat Rupa can be imagined as different planetary systems or collection of different planetary systems like Swa, Bhu, Bhuvar, and Swar, the lower body parts, the middle body part, the upper body part, or also like the Varnashram system, the head being the Brahmana, the Kshatriyas are the arms, the Vaishyas are the waist, and the Shudras are the feet. So in this way, by this meditation of Varnashram or the meditation of the different planetary systems, the Gyanis are indirectly meditating upon the personal form of the Lord. So that connection being made, they move to the next level. The level opens up for them to go higher. So so that is so anyway. So the Virat Rupa contains everything. All of material creation is contained within. So in this chapter 6, Brahma is discussing about the ingredients, where he gets the ingredients. So all the ingredients, because everything comes from the Lord, so therefore the ingredients to create, where Brahma does the secondary creation. So for that, all of that comes from the Lord only. So we are hearing about that. So the Virat Rupa, he gets it from the Virat Rupa. So you sort of imagine like how Brahma is going to cook a feast. And then to cook the feast, Brahma has to go to the market to buy ingredients. So to the ingredients for cooking the feast, right? The market is the Virat Rupa himself. So, and therefore we can hear in verses 1 to 17, which we have already covered previously. I'm just doing a quick recap. So we can see how the mouth of the Virat Rupa is the representing the voice. So this is the Tanmatra, how it represents the Tanmatra, how it represents the element, the Bhuta, how it represents the Devatas, the subtle elements, how it represents the subtle senses and the gross senses of the Lord. So all of this is linked in these verses. So the mouth of the Lord is like the voice of the Lord, the voice, wherever there is the voice, right? And the element of the speech or voice is fire, and the Devata is Agni. So skin, 7 layers of the skin of the body translates into the 7 Vedic meters. So there are 7 chandas or meters, different types of rhyme which we use to say the Vedic verses. So it corresponds to that. It also corresponds to touch, the gross sense organ of touch. And it also represents the Yagya Pita. Yagya Pita means it's the place where the yagya is conducted, because the skin is basically like the surface of the body, so everything happens on the skin. So therefore the yagya pita. Then we have the tongue, foodstuffs, yagya. So I won't go through this in detail because you've already gone through this in the previous session and also in the previous session. So anyway, here is a summary. So nostrils, breathing, fragrance, vayu, ashwini, kumaras, the earth, eyes, surya, swarga, ears, vedas, sound, sky. So like that, you can read all this. the body of the Lord, which is the active principles of everything. The hair, the body hair of the Lord is like the vegetations, especially if you remember the auspicious vegetation or the auspicious trees which are used for yagya, right? Like tulasi, like chandan, like the ashwatha tree, so like that. Then it continued. The hair on the head of the Lord of the Virat Rupa represents the clouds. The nails of the Lord, brilliant, is very brilliant, so brilliant like lightning. So lightning is situated within the nails of the Lord. It's hard also, so therefore like stones, and it's also where minerals are deposited like iron and so forth. And the arms of the Lord are the productive fields for execution. Lokapalas, it also represents the lords of the 10 directions. So they are representative of protection. They give protection. So the leaders, the Kshatriyas, so arms represent that. The forward steps of the Lord represents the three planetary systems, Bhu, Bhuvar, and Swar. And the feet of the Lord is the repository or the shelter of, of the devotees, of everybody, because it gives protection from fear and it bestows all desires. Right? And then in the second session of chapter 6, we continued with the rest of the verses until the verse 17, describing various aspects. So you can see how even the evacuating organ of the Lord, the genitals of the Lord, and all also, I forgot to put the genitals of the Lord here. So all these were also described. So the purpose is to show how the Lord is a person. So a complete person, just like when a child is born, the child, when you look at when first you see the child, you want to inspect every part of the child, right? So the genitals and everything. So you know whether it's a boy or a girl. So like that, and that represents the person, it's a personality. So just to clearly establish, even these parts of the Lord, so therefore it's not just an abstract aspect of the personality of the Lord. Every single part of the Lord is described, and there is a function given representing the material creation. So evacuating organ of the Lord is where is the shelter of envy, misfortune, death, and hell. So the idea is everything which we experience in our life is coming from the Lord only. So therefore, even good and bad, a positive and the negative. So therefore, for example, frustration, ignorance, and adharma, it is coming from the back of the Lord. So when someone turns, in the back of the Lord, so that is where all this reside. And the veins, so therefore we can understand everything comes from the Supreme Personality. There's nothing that can exist independently of the Lord, not even bad qualities. So therefore it's up to us which quality we want to associate with. So everything in matter, in material creation. Of course, the Lord has nothing to do with these things, nothing to do with frustration, ignorance, adharma, and so forth, because he is aloof. So we heard this point several times also. In this chapter also, we will hear it again, how everything is resting in the Lord. At the same time, the Lord is aloof, separate from it. Behold my mystic opulence, Arjuna, Krishna will tell in Bhagavad Gita, right? So he says how everything is resting on him, just like how strings are strung on a thread, pearls are strung on a thread, right? But at the same time, he is apart from it. So he is not touched or he is not affected by these things. He is therefore nirguna. So that is what nirguna means. He is free from material contamination or material qualities. So, but that doesn't mean he is without qualities. He has spiritual or transcendental qualities. So, anyway, so here we see the veins of the Lord, like the rivers, the bones are the mountains, the belly is the ocean, or the juice in the juice of life in all vegetables, in food stuff, uh, Pradhan. So Pradhan is the origin of all material creation. Because in the end, when Mahavishnu inhales, all the creation enters back into his belly. So at that time, everything is unmanifested again. So it's like Pradhan, the material creation unmanifested. So it represents destruction, ultimate destruction of the material creation when he inhales, right? The heart of the Lord is very close to the jivas, and it represents the collective consciousness of all the jivas, and it's the mind. So, and then Virat, so the form of the Lord of Virat is the past, present, and future. Right? So all of these was covered in the previous session. So now we've covered the description of the different body parts of the Lord. So now Brahma is continuing. So in part 3, we are discussing how verse 17 onwards, Lord Brahma is describing further, he's telling how he takes the ingredients for creation from the body of the Lord. All right, so the verse here, the sun illuminates both Anta and Bahi. Anta means, we sing the song by Bahir Narsingha, Hridaye Narsingha. So Bahi means external and Anta means internal. So in the same way, Bahiranga, Antaranga. Antaranga means internal energy. Bahir Anga or Antaranga means internal limbs. Bahir Anga means external limbs. So Anta is internal, Bahi is external. So the sun illuminates both internally and externally. Both sides of the sun gets illuminated, right, by expanding its radiation. Similarly, the Puman, that supreme personality of Godhead, right, by expanding his Virajan, so that's his Virat Rupa, he maintains and enlivens everything in creation, because everything emanates from him, right? And he is the life of creation. He is the life of life existence. So there is a nice verse, Nitya Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. So this is from the Vedas. I'm not sure which Veda. I don't think it's I think it's in the Yajur Veda. So this verse describes is given in the one of the Katha Upanishads, if I'm not mistaken. So it says, amongst all eternals, there is one supreme eternal, Nitya Nityanam, Chetanas Chetananam. And amongst all conscious beings, there is one supreme conscious being. And this personality, he is supporting, maintaining, and preserving the needs of the many. So that is one supreme being. So it's a clear proof that the supreme person is a person. The supreme being is a person. So he enlightens everything. So in just like how the sun enlivens the universe. So then the Lord is the Isha, the controller of Amritasya and Abhyasya. Amritasya means immortality, because the word Amridam is the one that gives immortality. And Abhaya means fearlessness. So he is the controller of immortality. So he alone can give immortality and Abhyayasya by his proxy. So sometimes he also allows others to give benedictions of immortality, like Lord Shiva, for example. So because of course he is also in one sense a transformation of the Supreme Lord, but by the benediction somewhere I've read in one of the scriptures, Lord Shiva gets the power to give immortality and the power to give mukti. Mukti means liberation by the grace of Lord Krishna. So therefore, and this is acknowledged by Lord Shiva himself. So therefore, he can do this. So in this way, by himself or by through proxy, through agents like Lord Shiva, the Lord is the controller of Amritasya and Abhyasya, immortality as well as fearlessness. He is transcendental to death, so he is beyond death, and therefore he can give abhayasya. He is the shelter of fearlessness. The fruitive actions of the material world. He is also beyond the fruitive actions. So fruitive activity cannot touch the Supreme Lord. Whatever that he performs, it's always transcendental. So if somebody comes and says, oh, the Lord is behaving like a king, or he's behaving like a mundane person, or he's doing things, or he's doing activities just like an ordinary person. So he may perform activities like an ordinary person. He may steal butter, he may steal clothes, he may do all kinds, he may hurt the cows. So, and he can do agriculture, he can do statesmanship, he can do warfare, but he is always transcendental. And just like how the Lord is transcendental, the pure devotees of the Lord can also do all these things just like an ordinary person, but there is a difference. Their activities are always transcendental. So that is the big secret of Bhakti Yoga. So, O Brahmana, it is therefore difficult to measure the Mahima Puruṣasya. Mahima means the glories. Purusha, glories of who? Of the Purusha. So Asya means of the. So therefore it is very difficult to measure. You can't measure, it's immeasurable. Therefore Anantashesh is trying. Until today he's trying. So it is described that Anantasesh at the bottom of the universe, he has unlimited hoods, and in each of his hoods there are unlimited mouths. And in each of his mouths he is glorifying the Lord. And every day he's glorifying different aspects of the Lord. He never repeats himself, but until now, from the beginning of creation, he has not once repeated himself, and he's still not completed yet. So the glories of the Lord are unlimited, right? So then Rama continues, Padeshu sarva bhutani pumsa stiti pado viduhu amritam shemam abhayam tri murdano adhyayi murdah. So he says, you should know vidu. Viduhu means you should know, comes from the word vidya, right? That Pumsa is the Supreme Lord. You should know that the Supreme Person, just by Pade is like in Tamil we say Padam, right? It's like 1/4. Padeshu means 1/4. You should know that the Supreme Lord, just by 1/4 of his energies, what is he doing? Therefore, it's called Pada Vibhuti. That means 1/4 of the energies of the Supreme Lord. Just by 1/4 of the Supreme Lord's energy, uh, which energy is that? It's the Sandhini Shakti. So the Sandhini Shakti is unlimited. So just by a quarter of the Sandhini Shakti is representative of Lord Balaram, right? Is the personification, but it belongs to the Supreme Lord, and in this way, he is he's creating and maintaining the entire material creations. Sarva Bhutani, all living entities, Sarva Bhutani, and in all of creation. So every opulence of all of creation and all the opulence of all the living entities is coming from him, just by 1/4 of his energies, right? And Amritam Shemam Abhayam. So what else is coming from him, right? Deathlessness, Amritam Shemam, all happiness, free from anxieties of birth, death, old age, disease. That's called Shemam. Shema comes from the word, right? Trimurdanaha. Trimurdanaha means beyond the three planetary systems. Adhayi Murdaye. Beyond the material coverings. So all of this is coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Abhayam, fearlessness, and no complete happiness, and deathlessness, right? And these things, Amridam, Shemam, and Abhayam, is not to be found within material creation. It is beyond the material creation. It is Adayi Murda in the spiritual world, beyond the three Murdana. Three Murdana means the Bhu, Bhuvar, Swarga. So Bhu, Bhuvar, Swarga are the three dimensions of planetary systems, right? Collections, you could say, right? Like you can see the lower planetary system, the middle planetary system, the upper planetary system. So three Murdana, beyond the three. So what is beyond the three? Beyond the three has to be outside of material creation. So the spiritual creation. So only here there is Amridam, there is Shemam, and there is Abhayam, right? Or in connection with this. So when the Lord empowers living entities, when somebody takes up bhakti, then because bhakti is an element from the spiritual world, not from the material world. Bhakti is spiritual. So when you associate with an element from the spiritual world, then we can also get the same Amridam, Shemam, and Abhayam. It's all by association. So Prabhupada says those planets in the spiritual sky are far, far greater than those planets in the total universes composed of the external potency of the Lord. Each of them is self-illuminating and more powerfully dazzling than, if we can imagine, the total sunshine of millions of mundane suns. So it's difficult for us to imagine. We cannot imagine. There are descriptions given in the scripture, but it's difficult for us to understand. How is there illumination when there is no sun and there is no moon? We can't imagine because we don't have experience of this. So until we go to the spiritual world, right, then we can experience this. So it is described how the entirety of creation under the Sandhini Shakti, right, you can divide it into into four parts. So that's why we say the material and the three parts of it, three pada is spiritual creation, and 1/4 of it is material creation. So material world is within that one period, one part of it. So just like how the sun shines, when the sun shines on earth, some parts are bright, but there will be some parts which are in shadow. So very little, but most of it is bright. Some aspect of it, a few aspects of it will be in shadow, but it's a very small aspect. So it's described as 1/4 of it is in shadow. So that's where the material creation takes place. The rest of it is the spiritual creation. So, and you could also link it this way: the spiritual energy of the Lord, the Antaranga Shakti of the Lord, is the 3/4 of it, and 1/4 is the Bahiranga Shakti of the Lord. And the living entities who live within the 3/4 part, the three pada aspect of the Lord's creation, are called Nitya Siddhas, right? So Prabhupada says, thus the 75% expansion of the radiation of the effulgence, right, of Brahma Jyoti is called his internal energy, whereas the 25% expansion is called the external energy or Bahiranga Shakti of the Lord. That's the 25%. So the people, the jivas, not just people, the living entities who live in the shadowy aspect of the creation are called Nitya Bhattas. So Nitya Siddha means eternally liberated. Nitya Baddha means eternally conditioned. So if the jivas live here, they are eternally conditioned. If they live here, they are eternally liberated. So therefore, Prabhupada describes the living entities who are residents of the spiritual as well as the material expansions are his marginal energy. So the Lord has, spiritual energy, of which the living entities is one part of it. So we have discussed this concept and philosophy several times already in our previous session. So I've used some diagrams and all that to understand. So and I won't go through that again. So we have Antaranga Shakti, and part of that Antaranga Shakti is the living entities. And because the living entity is coming from Antaranga Shakti, we are also eternal. We are also non-changing. We are always the same in quality, right? But it's a splinter. It's just a splinter of that energy, and because it's a splinter, it's very very small, and as a result, and there's a special quality of that energy. So this living entities, they have the quality where they can associate with either part of the energy. So they can either associate with the Antaranga Shakti or they can associate with the Bahiranga Shakti. So that is the special quality. And because of that, therefore, there is an entirely third category created for them. Beyond Antaranga and Bahiranga, it is called Tatashta Shakti. That means in between. Tatashta literally means in between. So therefore, Tatashta Shakti. And they are at liberty to live in either of the energies, whether external or internal. So they can choose. They are at the fence. They can choose. So therefore, there's a nice verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, where Krishna speaks to Uddhava, right, in the Uddhava Gita. Ekasyaiva mamam sasya jivasyaiva mahamate Bando asya vidyaya nadir. O most intelligent Uddhava, the living entity called Jiva, so that's us, the living entities, is part and parcel of me. So, Amsa, we are part of the Lord, Amsa. At the same time, we are also energy, Prakriti. So, therefore, we are very special, Tatashta, Shakti. But due to ignorance, he has been suffering in material bondage since time immemorial. So, therefore, due to he has become conditioned, Nitya Baddha. Somehow, it's just like the spark from the fire, somehow has fallen away from the fire. So, because it has fallen away from the fire, it has become conditioned, right? But it's eternal, not like the material sparks which can go off, right? This spark is eternal. So, but it has been conditioned, it has been covered. However, by knowledge, that spark can again regain back its original position. So, however, by knowledge, it can be liberated. So, therefore, that is the beginning. So, how do we get knowledge? We get knowledge by Shravanam. So, that's why, and this is the king of knowledge, right? Raja Vidyam, Raja Guhyam, it's secret. And it's the king of knowledge. And it is, what is that king of knowledge? It is Bhakti, Bhakti Yoga. And that king of knowledge, Raja Vidyam, can give us this, he can help us to come back to our original position. So Prabhupada says, the changing effects of eternal time are conspicuously absent in the immortal kingdom of God. So there is no time in the spiritual world. There is time, but the time is not controlling us. The time in the spiritual world is a servant. It is not a controlling. So it is the time in the spiritual world serves the bhava or serves the mood of ecstasy. So different types of ecstasies there are, and time serves those ecstasy. So according to the ecstasy, oh, we need this kind of flavor, this kind of mood, this kind of timing, so the time adjusts itself. But then it's the exact opposite here. Here, nothing can adjust according to time. It is we who have to adjust according to time. So our mood, our fancies, our ecstasies, our bhavas, whatever it is, has to comply with time. Time and tide waits for no one, right? So that is how it works in the material world. But exact opposite in the spiritual world. Time becomes the maid servant. It becomes the servant. It actually, time doesn't exist. It just exists as a flavor enhancer, you know. So it's more like how we say we have artificial flavors. So therefore, the time itself doesn't exist in the in the spiritual creation, but it acts like a flavor to enhance the pastimes. That's all. It doesn't act as a controlling agent at all. So, therefore, the changing effects of eternal time are conspicuously absent in the immortal kingdom of God, which should therefore be understood to have no influence of time. So, and therefore, no fear whatsoever. So, that's why it is eternity. The concept of eternity cannot exist where there is time. So, time and because it's a paradox, time and eternity cannot exist together. So, where there is eternity, there is no time. Just like how Krishna says, Krishna Surya Sama, right? Maya Haya Andakara. So where there is Krishna, there is Krishna is like the sun, Surya Sama, and Maya is like the shadow. So where there is Surya, there cannot be shadow, right? So in that way, we can understand this also. So Prabhupada continues, happiness in spiritual nature always increases. So this is Prabhupada describing the various qualities of the spiritual world, just to give us a preview of how the spiritual world is. Number one, there is eternity, right? And time only exists as flavors. Number two, everything is effulgent. That one was already covered earlier, right? And number three, happiness in spiritual nature always increases in volume. That means if there is happiness, the happiness cannot become less. It can only increase more and more and more and more, continuously ever increasing. Anandam buddhim vardhanam, right? So the Ananda Buddhim Vardhanam is increasing by every step. Pratipadam Purnam Ratasvadanam. It increases more and more. We cannot imagine this. So this can only be there in the spiritual world, or in association with the particle of the spiritual world, which is Bhakti Yoga. So when we associate with any of the particles of the spiritual world, which is in relation with Bhakti, then we can also experience Anandam Buddhim Vardhanam Pratipadam Purnam Ratasvadanam. Ever exists, ever increasing, ever expanding ecstasy. So this is what the holy name can give us, because it is a particle of the spiritual world. Actually, it is not a particle of the spiritual world. It is the Lord himself coming from the spiritual world, right? So therefore, he is the summum bonum. The holy names are the summum bonum. He is the Lord himself. Krishna avatar. There is no question of decreasing the bliss. So wouldn't we want that, to be in a place where happiness of anything only increases more and more and more? That means, imagine you're eating something. In our life, when we eat when we are very hungry, one form of happiness is when we are very hungry and there is a very nice food in front of us. We are very hungry and we know there's a feast for us, and we have been fasting the day thinking about the feast. And in front of the feast, we are now sitting and we are eating. But what happens when we are eating? As we eat, we are happy, but as they keep giving you the food, the happiness slowly decreases because we are getting full. And then it decreases. At one point, it becomes, ayo, I cannot eat anymore. And then after that, if you keep eating, the happiness inverts itself. It becomes unhappiness. Oh my God, I have to finish this. I cannot finish this. I have to. Oh, then it becomes misery. Then you start vomiting. You start getting diarrhea. So that becomes, from happiness, it becomes unhappiness. That's what our experience is in the material world. But in the spiritual world, no, the happiness increases only. So how to imagine? We can't imagine, but that is the description is given in all the scriptures, and also in the acharyas are explaining to us that way. So such unalloyed spiritual bliss is nowhere to be found within the orbit of the material universe. But as I said, if we associate with the particle of the spiritual atmosphere, then we can experience this, a particle. So bliss, that means bhakti. So wherever bhakti is, we are associating in whichever way we are associating with bhakti. What is that? That means associating with the holy name, associating with the name, the nama, the rupa, the guna, the lila, associating with the processes of bhakti, shravanam, kirtanam, smaranam, associating with the devotees of the Lord, sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya. So all these things, any of these aspects of bhakti, which is a particle of the spiritual world, then we can also experience bliss. Otherwise, no, cannot. So the spiritual world, which consists of three-quarter, so three pada, right, of the Lord's energy, is situated beyond this material world, right? So the upper planetary systems are called the Satvika Lokas. Satvika means because they are situated in pure goodness, not the material mode of goodness, which is not pure. So this is called Suddha Sattva. So the Vaikuntha planets are called Suddha Sattva planets, right? But Antastri Lokyas tu aparo. So tu aparo, but tu means but not. But it's not this kind of happiness and this kind of enjoyment cannot, it's not meant for others. Aparo. Who are those others? Those others are Griha Medo. So remember Sukadev Goswami mentioned Griha Medis. So he was telling Parikshit Maharaj, don't be a Griha Medi. So Griha Medis are those people who are householders, who are fully materialistic. They have no time for spiritual activities. They have no time to lend a ear or to do any kind of chanting or to do any kind of service. Nothing to do with the spiritual activities. So that's Griha Medi. Brihat Vrataha, Abrita, Abrihat Vrataha. Abrihat means vrata means austerity, and so it's not meant, this kind of happiness, it's not meant for the grihamedi. And what's the main activity of the grihamedi? The main activity of the grihamedi is abrihad vrataha. That means he doesn't perform austerity, particularly brihat. Brihat means celibacy. So he doesn't follow the vows of celibacy. So that is Prabhupada's is mentioning it over here. The highest benefit that can be awarded to a human being is to train him to be detached from sex life, particularly because it is only due to the sex indulgence that the conditioned life of material existence continues birth after birth. So sex life or sexual pleasure is described as the king of all pleasures in the material creation, because the jivas want to experience material pleasures. So the tan matras, which is sound, which is touch, which is taste, which is form, which you can see, which you can enjoy through the years, which you can. So all of this has its culmination in the attraction between the opposite sex. So therefore, so and this is definitely understood in material nature. Even the modern psychologists understand this. That's why in advertisement, right, what is the thing to attract people? The whole point of advertisement is to attract the customer. And what is the most attractive thing that can attract a customer? It is sex. So therefore, you see in every advertisement, particularly you go to the Western countries or even go to Singapore. You go to Singapore. In Malaysia, it's not so bad. But if you go to Singapore, the billboards there, every billboard in Singapore, I notice, it has so much of sexual element. The opposite sex or in the opposite gender in various poses of undressing or whatever it is. It's basically to attract, so that we don't see that so much in Malaysia. But in Western countries and in atheistic countries, so-called secular countries, right? This is there. It's unrestricted. So that's because the psychologists and the business people know the power of sex. So therefore, it is representing the height of enjoyment, of material enjoyment. So therefore, and if one indulges in this, in sexual activity without restraint, without regulation, without celibacy, then ultimately one cannot go back to the spiritual realm. So therefore, the highest benefit is this. So even Krishna consciousness, even bhakti, all the different types of yoga, like in the dhyana yoga, they forcefully stay away from this, right? But in bhakti yoga, one allowance is given when it is meant for the progeny, when it is meant to beget a Krishna conscious child, for childbearing. So for that purpose, it is allowed. So there is no sin, there is no problem, there is no issue. But even that also, grihamidis are those who continuously go on with that. So at one point of time, one has to eventually renounce even that. So therefore, the whole point of varnashram system is made in such a way for human society that it trains the person to go gradually from brahmachari, learning how to, so from a very young age, they are trained to control their senses. And then so this is very powerful when it's taught at a young age. When one is already much older, when one has tasted the various aspects, so then it's not so easy for them to control. But in the beginning, before they taste anything which is forbidden, if they learn to control themselves, then they have that mental strength in them, that even later on when they enter grahastha life, when they take up responsibility as a householder and to have a family, because the earlier training was there, so it helped, and the understanding and all this, so it's easier for them to control. So and eventually the grahastha life itself will teach them the heavy responsibilities of childbearing, so that eventually it will leach away the desire, and then one will want to renounce at one point of time. So if it's organically meant to bring the human being from one level to the next level to the level of renunciation naturally, right? And ultimately, it cannot even happen unless one is attracted to higher taste. Because if there is no attraction to higher taste, then one cannot give up the lower taste of the material enjoyment. So, therefore, Bhakti Yoga is very wonderful because it gradually entices the devotee with a higher taste. And as one practices Bhakti Yoga very carefully, avoiding all the offenses, following the regulations as given by the gurus, so then what happens is that bliss, that higher taste within, starts to increase. We experience it more and more, and it starts to uh, eclipse the material taste. So when that happens, then we automatically lose taste for material things. Just like how, at one point of time, I wasn't born vegetarian. I was born, my family, although my mother was vegetarian, but she brought me up as a meat eater. So because she thought that it's necessary for good health and all that. But anyway, I used to enjoy eating these kind of things at one point of time in my life. And then when I took up Krishna consciousness, I was thinking, oh, I'm something like a connoisseur of food. I enjoy eating. So then I thought, if I become a devotee, how will I? I cannot go to so many places. I cannot enjoy the different types of cuisines and so forth. Uh, but because I had some conviction, there was a higher taste and there was some conviction, so I could understand this. And then when there was prasadam, I got addicted to it. So I didn't. I was blown off. Oh, so wonderful! Prasadam can be so great. So and therefore, little by little, actually it wasn't little by little. I just decided one shot, I'm going to give this up, and then that's it. So ever since then, I didn't turn back. So, and I'm sure many of you have similar stories, similar experiences as well. And there was once I heard a pastime. This is a past. This is a They had a scientific conference in I think in the Vatican. So the devotees organized a scientific conference. Sorry, they had it in the Vatican. They also had it in Mayapur. The first conference was in Mayapur. So at that time, they invited a lot of Nobel laureates. They invited a lot of scientists, and then they had a conference to talk about the existence of God. So some of them were skeptical, the scientists, but they came anyway. So they presented some here, some things like that. So and then there was one Nobel laureate who was going back. They were sending him back into the airplane. They were driving back in the car. And then this Nobel laureate, they asked him, right? So, what did you? Can you tell me what did you one? If there is one thing which you can take back from this conference, what is that one thing which you could take back from this conference? So, in the conference, they stayed there for many days. Usually conference will be 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, or 1 week, right? So, and during this time, they were staying in Mayapur. So then this man said, you know something? The one thing I realized that I could survive and be completely satisfied with a vegetarian diet. So that's what he said. Of course, living in Mayapur, very nice prasadam and everything. So he said, so that's very interesting. So he had a taste of higher taste, and then he could give up the lower taste, and he could understand, oh, I could go on with this higher taste. Why do I need to take something lower? So that is the point. That is the power of Bhakti Yoga. That is what Bhakti Yoga can do. It gives you a taste of ecstasy, and you begin to hanker for that ecstasy continuously. And in this way, you can give up the lower taste. So Prabhupada continues, human civilization in which there is no control of sex life is a fourth class civilization, right? It's very, very low. It's like dogs and cats. As long as the bodily attachment for sensual enjoyment is encouraged, the individual spirit soul is forced to continue the repetition of birth and death on account of the material body. So that's the thing. So ultimately, All our prayers and all our devotional activities is meant for us to lose taste of material things, to become detached from matter, and to become fully attached to spirit, to Krishna. So it cannot happen the other way around, right? So we have to first of all attach ourselves somehow or other. Prabhupada always says, somehow or other, become attached to Krishna. Don't worry too much about the rules and regulations in the beginning, the do's and don'ts in the beginning. Don't worry too much about it. Somehow or other, get yourself attached to Krishna. And then little by little, with association, you increase your association, increase your activities, get yourself more and more attached to Krishna, and automatically you will start realizing you have lost taste for material things already. It's kind of like, one of the devotees gave a nice analogy. I can share that analogy. It's like, going in an aeroplane. If you had, I'm sure many of you, or probably some of you, had that experience going in an aeroplane. So in an aeroplane, you are in the beginning, you're on the ground. So you're on the ground, and the aeroplane is taxiing, and then it starts to speed, accelerate on the runway. So you're on the ground, you're on the ground, you're on the ground, you're on the ground, on the ground. Suddenly you're on the you're on the sky. Suddenly you're no longer on the ground. So that point when you have suddenly lifted, you had lift off. The aeroplane has lifted. It just happens. You don't realize you were on the ground, on the ground, on the ground. Suddenly you're on the air already. So that's how. Uh, that's what will happen also in our spiritual life. So we are practicing spiritual life, practicing spiritual life, practicing spiritual life. Sadhana bhakti, Vaidhi bhakti. Vaidhi bhakti means bhakti in devotional, with all the rules and regulations. So little by little, step by step, we are following all the do's and don'ts. So Rupa Goswami tells us, right? uh, Tat tat karma pravartanat, right? We should do everything that is prescribed, and we should avoid everything that is prohibited. So little by little, add things into our life. We begin with chanting, increase our chanting more and more, follow the four regulative principles more and more strictly, and then little by little increase our hearing, increase our chanting, increase our seva. So in this way, we tighten every part of our bhakti aspect. And then what we will see is suddenly from Vaidhi Bhakti, we have gone to Bhava Bhakti. So that transition, it's described, it'll occur suddenly. You will not realize, just like how the aircraft is suddenly taking off. You're on the ground, suddenly you don't realize it, you're just on flying already. So that is Bhava Bhakti. So it will just creep upon us. So that is the wonderful thing about bhakti, right? So anyway, so therefore we have to give this up. This is our meditation. So if we meditate on this, and if we have this as our goal, right? So we know that this is the standard, that we have to do this. So don't despair, or don't feel despondent that it's far away from where we are, whatever standards we are in, right? Understand that it can be achieved by association, right? Sometimes it takes a few years only, sometimes it takes many years, sometimes it takes only a moment. So it depends on the power of that association, and it depends on the power of our conviction. So the more we hear, the more we associate, the more we chant, our conviction builds. So Prabhupada continues, youngsters who have had no taste of sex life can easily follow the vow of celibacy. And once fixed in the principle of such a life, one can easily continue to the highest perfectional stage. So that's the thing. Training is very important. So, so therefore, in ISKCON society, Srila Prabhupada has established four regulative principles: no meat eating, no illicit sexual activity, no gambling, and no intoxication. So, and especially when we train people from a very young age, especially when children are born into Krishna consciousness, they will find it very difficult to do all these things. I notice, I sort of had an observation, uh, and in my observation, I found sometimes, devotees, they have children, and now many devotees have children, and the children have grown up. Sometimes the children take up the devotional service, sometimes they don't. They may go astray a bit. But despite what they do, if they have grown up as vegetarian, they cannot give up that vegetarian. They don't break that vow. They always keep that vow. I've not met any, very few, in fact, I have not met anyone who has broken the vow of vegetarianism. At least 90+%, they will not give it up because they are used to it. They are just so used to eating vegetarian food, right? Even though they don't believe in spiritual life, even though they don't have conviction, right? But they're just so used to it that do they can't eat non-vegetarian food. So they have learned that. So in this way, every aspect of it can also be trained. So it depends on the aspect of training, right? So if one is used to good association, one will always remember it. If one is used to performing, one is trained with austerities from early childhood, one will easily be able to perform austerities when they grow up also. So if one is used to speaking the truth, for example, satyam, from young childhood itself, then they will find it disturbing to speak anything other than the truth, even when they grow up. When one is used to, so in this way, so what spoils all these things? It's bad association only. Bad association is so dangerous. It's just like how good association is so powerful. Lava matra sarva siddhi hoy. Just a moment of good association can give all perfection. The same is also true, contrary, vice versa. So one moment of bad association is also enough to do the worst harm. So an example is Ajamila. So Ajamila was trained from childhood, but he had bad association. Of course, there were some issues. Probably there was some bad karma somewhere, or he did some aparat. So usually these things happen when aparat is there. So one has to be very, 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 very careful with aparat in devotional practice. Because if we find why someone has fallen down from a certain position, the only reason is aparat. Somewhere, either knowingly or unknowingly, one has done it. For example, there's this example of a sage. I think his name is Chavana Muni. Chavana Muni, I think so. So this sage, the sage who was meditating, probably you have heard the story. This sage who was meditating underwater. So for many, many years, he was meditating underwater, and he was strictly celibate, right? And but suddenly, at one point of time, he happened to open his eyes, and that too underwater, mind you. And there he happened to see two fishes, a pair of fish, copulating, having sexual relationship. Fish, can you imagine? He happened to see a pair of fish having this, and that awoke a desire within his heart. But he closed his eyes. I continued, and then he continued meditating. But just like a seed has been planted by what he saw, that seed grew, and it grew to an extent where it broke his concentration. He couldn't concentrate anymore, that too underwater. So he just broke his meditation, and he came up into the surface, and then he went searching for a king, and then he told the king, I want to get married to your daughters. So, and the king married, and not just one daughter, he married all the daughters. I can't remember how many daughters he got married to. Definitely more than 10 or 20, or maybe even thousands, I don't know. So then in that way he married, and he gave up his transcendental uh, meditation and everything, and he became a Grihamidi in one sense. But after some time, after many years, again he came back to his senses. He realized his mistake, and after that he left everything and continued back into his spiritual practice. So why this happened? How is it such a sage could just lose his concentration just like that? So why that happened was, there's a backstory to that, and that backstory is described in another Purana. And when I found out about that, that backstory said the reason he became like that was because he made an aparat. So what happened was, at one point of time, the Chavana Muni, sorry, let's call him Chavana Muni. I forgot his actual name. Could be this, could be Chavana Muni, or could be another person. But then, anyway, let's call him Chavana Muni for now. So he was meditating and doing meditation, but he wasn't doing it underground. He wasn't doing underwater. He was doing it by the banks of a lake. So, and when he was meditating, suddenly he heard a loud splash. So when he heard a loud splash, he opened his eyes, and then he saw how Garuda caught a creature. I don't know whether it's a fish or a alligator or a snake or a turtle, because Garuda eats all these things. So therefore, he saw Garuda catching one of these things and flying away. So the by catching them, it created a loud splash, and it disturbed the meditation of this sage. So the sage was a bit temperamental. So when he saw this, he got angry. He immediately cursed Garuda. So he cursed Garuda, saying that you will not. I can't remember what was the curse, but I'm just saying it offhand from what I remember. Something like Garuda shouldn't come to this area or something like that. So anyway, but Garuda was not bothered. He's like, okay, fine, I accept your curse, and then he flew away. So that's a devotee, right? But because of that, it's wrong for this sage to curse Garuda. Garuda is exalted. He's beyond him. He's above him. So for him to curse, thinking that he's great, for him, a mere dhyana yogi, to curse someone who is an associate of the Lord, Garuda, that is aparad, Vaishnava aparad. So because of this Vaishnava aparad, you saw what happened. This Muni later on, when he was doing the meditation, it completely broke his spiritual practice and brought him down to a lower level. So that's what it does. So anyway, so the most powerful aspect to disturb, that's why Indra also keeps a lot of apsaras, heavenly maidens. So whenever he finds that somebody is threatening his position, doing spiritual practices, meditations, or whatever it is, his favorite method is to send one of these apsaras. So we know last time how Vishwamitra was disturbed by Ramba. So Ramba, was it Menaka? I think it was one of them, Menaka. So like that, many sages in this way fell victim to the allurement. In fact, Vishwamitra, simply by hearing the ankle bells of I think it was Ramba. So hearing the ankle bells of Ramba, and he got disturbed in his mind, and then he gave up his meditation. So like this, right? So anyway, back to that. So Varnashram is very helpful in society. Varnashram helps society to be more civilized and to uphold the principles of celibacy, truthfulness, and all that. But it cannot support aparat. So one has to also avoid aparat. And at the same time, if one takes advantage of Varnashram, then one can be very easily undisturbed and well situated. So of course now is Kali Yuga, is very difficult, right? But still, that's what Prabhupada is trying to establish. He told everybody we should have. So congregation nowadays, ISKCON spiritual life is very much in congregation. So therefore, we need to give training to the parents, training to the devotees, training to the children. So in this way, we can again help them to take up spiritual life very easily. So continuing, Lord Brahma continues to speak to Narada Muni, and the spiritual world. So he's talking about the spiritual world. We were describing about the spiritual world. So going back to the verse, it's describing how the spiritual world is ever expanding happiness, ever expanding bliss, right, and eternity. So all of these things are wonderful, but it's not for the Grihamedis, and it's not for those people who cannot maintain celibacy. So, and this spiritual world is then it's meant for who? So it is especially meant for those who will never be reborn. So who are these people? These are the transcendentalists, not the karmis, right? The transcendentalist, those who are in the path of nirvisesha. Sorry, not nirvisesha. The path of what's that word? Pravriti marga and nivriti marga. So nivriti marga. So the path of renunciation, nivriti marga. So in nivriti marga, there are two paths. One is the path of the jnanis, and the other is the path of the bhaktas. So the path of the bhaktas is especially sweet and especially rewarding. And it's the culmination of the path of the jnani also. The jnani also ultimately has to become a bhakta only. So anyway, so that's the idea. So Prabhupada says, the householders and persons who have deliberately broken the vow of celibacy cannot enter into the kingdom of deathlessness. The pious householders or the fallen yogis or the fallen transcendentalists can be promoted to the higher planets within the material world if they fail to, but they will fail to enter into the kingdom of deathlessness. So that is ultimately important. So no matter how pious someone is, no matter how, so one can be a karmi. Karmi means one who follows the fruitive activities given in the Vedas. So Vedas, karma kanda activities, for promotion. So one can be very pious in behavior. One can observe many things. He can observe austerities. He can observe various aspects. But if he still entertains desires for material sense gratification, right? Then at the point of death, the whole idea is at the point of death, one has to be done with these things. One has to be no longer interested in material sense gratification. One has to bring oneself to that point. But if one is still having desires for sense gratification, what happens? Chapter 8 Bhagavad Gita warns us, right? Whatever we remember, whatever we think, right, at the time of death, that we will attain for sure. Arjuna, Krishna tells. So therefore, we have to be free from this. So if one is still thinking of sense gratification at the time of death, so no matter how pious he has been, he cannot attain the spiritual kingdom. He will again has to take birth. But he may take birth in a higher place. He may take birth in Indra Loka. He may take birth as a Devata. But he cannot transcend the cycle of birth and death. So that has to come from a transcendentalist. So that is what yoga is all about, to transcend material sense gratification through the pathways of yoga, which is what we are doing. Bhakti yoga is meant for that. So we don't denounce, we don't say, oh, we don't get married. We can get married, but we have children for in Krishna consciousness. We in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am sexual activity which is meant for the progeny, for developing good progeny. So if we this sexual activity, if it's done in for the service of Krishna, in the sense of the purpose of getting good children, then there is no sin, right? But if it's done for any other purpose, then there is problem. So then it is not yoga, right? So similarly, we also can eat. Nobody says we cannot eat. We can eat good food, very nice, tasty, nice food, but it is prasadam. Yajna shishta shina shanto muchanti sarva kilbisai bunjanti te tu agam papa ye pachanti atmakarana. The yogis, the transcendentalists, always eat food which has first been offered as sacrifice. Those who eat food which has not been offered for sacrifice verily eat only sin, Arjuna, Krishna is telling, right? So therefore, in transcendental practice, in yogic practice, we eat purified food. In bhakti yoga, we eat food which is free from karma. So we eat prasadam, because prasadam is not only free from karma, it is giving us spiritual strength as well, purification. So now Brahma is saying Vishwan. Vishwan means that all-pervading person. So whenever the word Vishwan is used, that means this person is everywhere, right? This person, by his energies, is thus comprehensively the Ashraya. Because he is everywhere and he's transcendental, right? He is the master. Ashraya means the reservoir. Ashraya also means the shelter. Ashraya means also the master. So he is the master in the activities of dominion as well as the activities of devotional service. Because he is the master of material creation, so he is the master of karma kanda activities. He is also the master of yoga activities. So as I said, there are two paths. There is the pravriti marga, the path of material sense gratification or material dominion, and there is the path of nivriti marga. Marga means path. Nivriti means the path of renunciation. So those who are karma kandis, they are taking the path of pravriti marga. So in pravriti marga, they follow the various rituals and sacrifices given in the Vedas, known as karma kanda, fruitive activities. So, somebody wants good business, somebody wants good health, they do this yagya, they do that prayer, they do this. So that kind of thing. So it's karma kanda. But the yogis, the transcendentalists, have nothing to do with karma kanda. They completely rely on the Supreme Lord for everything, right? The understanding is the Supreme Lord will guard me, will maintain whatever Krishna says, right? I maintain, what's that verse? Forgot that verse. For my pure devotees, I maintain what they have, and I preserve what they have, and maintain. I maintain and I preserve what they have. So that is what the Lord does, and a devotee has full faith only in that. He doesn't do anything else. So, therefore, in this way, both in the activities of karma kanda as well as in the activities of devotional service, the Lord is the shelter of everything. Both karma kanda has the shelter in the Lord, bhakti also has the shelter in the Lord. Because karma kanda has the shelter in the Lord, because karma kanda activities, prescribed activities in the Vedas, is also coming from the Vedas. It's also coming from the Lord Himself. So, but this process is very slow, very gradual. It's very, very, very slow. Gradually, by following the rules and regulations very carefully, they will eventually come in contact with a devotee. But what they do with the contact with the devotee, that's entirely up to them. The choice is up to them. Krishna doesn't force bhakti. So, but he can give you the facility of a devotee's contact. What you do with that contact is up to you. So that's what karma kanda can give you in the long run. By performing fruitive activities, after many, many, many years, one finally gets a little bit of inclination for devotees and for devotional, some little appreciation for devotional activities and for devotees. And that will be the beginning of bhakti. But if they choose not to take it up, that's also up to them. But both of these are under the shelter of the Lord. Because everything comes from the Lord, right? Aham sarvasya prabhavo, everything, and that means everything, right? This is the meaning of that. So the Purusha, the Supreme Lord, is the ultimate ashraya, the shelter of both avidya and vidya of all situations. So just now we were talking about karmakanda and bhakti. So in parallel, karmakanda is referred to as avidya, ignorance, because it doesn't bring you out of the cycle of birth and death. It only gives you temporary material benedictions. So that is considered avidya. Avidya means the opposite of knowledge. Vidya means knowledge. Avidya means opposite of knowledge or ignorance, right? And vidya, knowledge, in all situations, both avidya and vidya are sheltered within the Lord. So one, you can ask, how is it that the Lord can be a shelter for ignorance? Isn't the Lord transcendental? Isn't the Lord... So of course the Lord is transcendental, but we are talking about the Virat Purusha, the Virat Rupa within the material creation, right? So earlier we mentioned how Brahma said the front of the Lord is all auspiciousness, the back of the Lord is the shelter of inauspiciousness. So even inauspiciousness has a shelter in the body of the Lord. So the back part of the Lord is the shelter for inauspiciousness of the Lord, right?
So avidya takes shelter of the Lord at the back. So we devotees, we don't want to associate with the back of the Lord. The back of the Lord is Maya. The front of the Lord is Seva. When we see the front of the Lord, we want to serve the Lord. So devotional service is Vidya and sense gratification is Avidya. So Prabhupada says there are different stages of Avidya. So even Avidya, there are different stages. And this is very interesting. Prabhupada says they are called Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So that is a very heavy statement. Prabhupada calls Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha as Avidya. It is not Vidya. Yes, Dharma is good. It's religiosity, it's piety, right? Doing good. Artha, collecting riches, earning money, right? Kama, satisfying desires, even good desires. And moksha, getting free from the cycle of birth and death. Even that, even getting free from the cycle of birth and death, even that is considered as avidya. Prabhupada is saying that's the devotee's perspective. Devotee will always say like that, right? Because simply getting free from cycle of birth and death is not the end of the story. One has to be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord. Otherwise, one will again fall back into the cycle of birth and death. So, therefore, just simply dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. If dharma, artha, kama, and moksha is good, varnashram is good, but if it is devoid of the concept of Vasudeva, if it is not connected with the devotional service of the Supreme Lord or the service of Bhagavat, that means it is nothing to do with the Supreme Lord, nothing to do with Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, nothing to do with the pure devotees, which are also called Bhagavat, then it is simply a waste of time. It is avidya. So all of this, varnashram, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, has to be in connection with the Lord. Then it is vidya. Then it is transcendental. Right? That is real knowledge. Because it can lead towards the ultimate salvation. So from him only, all the universal globes and the Virat, Virat means the universal form. All the universal globes, that means all the planets and the Virat Rupa, with all the Bhuta. Bhuta means material elements, the ingredients, the material elements or ingredients, such as earth, water, fire, air, ether, the subtle ingredients like ego, mind, intelligence, and so forth, right? Guna. Guna means the qualities, the material qualities, the material natures like passion, ignorance, and goodness, right? And Indriya. Indriya means the senses. Senses means the gross senses as well as the subtle senses, as well as the knowledge acquiring senses, right? Are generated. So everything is generated, the ingredients, the senses, the material qualities, all come, the material universes, the different globes, all come from the body of the Virat Rupa. Yet the Lord himself is aloof from such material manifestations, like the sun, which is separate from its rays and heat. So just like sunlight and the sun, although it is non-different, but you can have sunlight separate from the sun, although it's non-different. It's aloof. The sun is not affected by the sunlight. It is the sunlight which is depending on the sun. The sun doesn't depend on the sunlight because he is the one generating the sunlight, right? So therefore, the Lord is, although everything depends on the Lord, everything emanates from the Lord, everything comes from the Lord, yet the Lord is separate. That is the mystic opulence of the Supreme Lord. That is the Achintya Shakti of the Lord. Only the Lord can do that. Nobody else can do that. So Prabhupada says he is therefore simultaneously personal and impersonal. He is simultaneously Brahmajyoti, the impersonal aspect of the Lord. At the same time, he is also personal, right? By his inconceivable potency, or he is the one without a second, displaying complete unity in a diversity of material and spiritual manifestations. So this is very nice, Prabhupada's sentence here. complete unity in a diversity. So this is a paradox. He can be both simultaneously personal and impersonal. He can both simultaneously be the support of everything, at the same time separate and aloof from everything. So this is the Achintya Shakti of the Lord. Right? So then Brahma continues. Oh, it's already 9:30. So maybe we'll stop here. Right? So therefore, we will stop at this verse. Verse 22, and we will continue in the next session. Brahma continues to speak about this, and I think the chapter is up to verse 43. Probably we'll have another 2 sessions before we finish this chapter, 2 or 3 sessions at least. Right, so let us digest everything that we have heard, that we have discussed. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for your time and your presence and for patiently hearing, right? Uh, if you have any questions, anything you'd like to clarify? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Okay, so there's no questions. So again, anytime you have any questions, feel free, right? You can reach out to me through WhatsApp or to, message or call or anything. Happy to answer. And if you have time, please do read through. Prabhupada puts a lot of nice purports in all of these verses, and it's very, very interesting. And as we read, we will have more questions also. But anyway, so this is fine enough. So, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good weekend. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Bol. Hare Krishna.